In 2020, my husband and I felt called to become foster parents. We had a few placements throughout the journey, and then one night I got a phone call that I didn't answer. I had never not answered a phone call from DCS before, but I was really tired that night. I just felt that I couldn't do it. I couldn't get up in the middle of the night and clean our house and get it ready for a kid this time. But then they called my husband, which they never do, and he answered the phone, and he rolled over and he looked at me and said, "They want us to take some twins." And I jumped out of bed and I was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Are you sure? We didn't even think about it." I said, "Yeah, get up." Tell them yes. We have to clean the house. And 2 hours later, a lady brings in these 2 carriers, sets them on our floor. We sign paperwork for each kid, and she leaves. She didn't even tell us which twin was which. She just left. We did get a text message about an hour later telling us which twin was which, and thankfully we hadn't changed their clothes yet. We had some other placements before we had the placement of the boys, but they were short term. We weren't sure if that's how this would go with the boys. We were just praying through it and praying that God would make them feel seen in any way that they needed to throughout this process, and whatever happened, whatever God's will was, would be what would happen. As the months passed, it was clear that it was getting more serious, and with the boys being such a young age, they needed stability, and the sooner they could get stability, the better for their mental and physical trauma that could be caused. Anyone who has been a foster parent knows how difficult it can be to work through the different placements that you have. Each placement is different, but there's always so many moving parts that can get tricky along the way. With this one, it seemed to be especially tricky. There were things that shouldn't have happened. There were moments that paperwork was not filled out, notes weren't taken, notes disappeared. So we just had to keep praying that God would have our case be seen. Over a year into our adoption journey, I found myself sitting in a Big Lots parking lot thinking that there was no way that things were going to work out the way I wanted them to. I had to keep my eyes on the future, but also I was scared to look at the future. I was sitting there and I was just thinking, am I seen? I know I want the boys to be seen, and I know I want our case to be seen, but am I seen? And then all of a sudden I just got this big hug, and I had never felt more loved by Jesus in that moment. Against recommendation, we did decide to retain an attorney who could help us through this. She said that absolutely she would take this case. It's going to be really difficult. Yeah, she gave me no guarantees that this would be something that she could win, but she would take it anyway because of who referred me to her. During our time with her as our attorney, she was able to open so many doors that we didn't think were even possible to be opened. She gave me peace, even though she was working so hard, and I'm not sure how much peace she had with it at the time because she was having to do all of these really difficult, impossible things that there were no cases on that she could even study. But she gave me peace because God gave me peace by having her as our attorney. After having gone through all of these trials and having the boys in our house for over a year and a half, we were finally able to adopt them. After being able to adopt them, I felt the most relief I've ever felt in my life over any scenario. I felt seen, and I could finally officially call myself a mom, which is something I refused to call myself throughout that year and a half. Something I learned throughout this process was that it's okay to fight for something. You don't have to always be the nice person trying to be friendly and agree with whatever's being said. And I also was able to exponentially strengthen my faith. throughout this process. If I did not have God throughout this process, I don't think I would have been able to bring this process to completion. I would have given up. I wouldn't have been able to do it. I personally didn't have the strength to do it. I had to pray daily for Him to give me strength to get through what was happening in our lives on a daily and hourly basis. No matter what you're going through right now, and no matter what you're walking through, just know that God is here. He sees you, He's with you, and He can give you strength to get through it.